Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Friday, April 17th edition of the MMAOB Daily Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin, and I'll be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. The quarantine's been just over a month now. Last UFC card was just over a month. That was the UFC Brasilia card. All of our quarantines kind of coincide with then. It's been a crazy month for everyone, I think. Hopefully you guys are staying safe. Hopefully you're staying vigilant as well. Social distancing, everything that is important at a time like this, because it's pretty crazy right now still. I've been doing well. Obviously, the workload's been cut down, as you guys know, but I am still doing two podcasts a week, so Monday and Friday. So I just did the Monday one. We had a great guest on, Tom Taylor. Go back and check out that show if you missed it. Tom was awesome. And then obviously today's Friday, so second podcast. And I was doing the script this morning, and I was like, man, like, what am I going to write in my itinerary? Because I forgot what I not talked about in the last couple of days. I used to do, obviously, the podcast every day. So I had to go back and look. Spoiler alert, there wasn't a lot in the last few days that happened, but there is a few pieces of news. And obviously the biggest one I'm going to start with here, UFC 250. This card has been revealed by Dana White. He wants it to happen May 9th. We don't know where it's going to happen. We don't know if it's going to happen, but that's the goal. And the card is really stacked. I hope it happens. I think all of us hope it happens, because it'd be an amazing card for sure. But at the same time, it's kind of the same situation as UFC 249, which, by the way, is supposed to take place tomorrow, but obviously got canceled. But we would have been watching that fight tomorrow. We were supposed to watch Tony and Habib tomorrow, or even Tony and Gaethje tomorrow, and it's not going to happen. But they want to do another card on May 9th. It's possible things could get better by then. I still feel like that's really optimistic. But I have to give the UFC credit. This card that they released in the last couple of days is fantastic. It's basically like all the last 3 or 4 cards, the best fights in those cards, plus they added an extra fight, which I'll talk about in a second here. But it looks good. I got to be honest. Like, this is absolutely a pay-per-view worthy card. You could do it on free TV, but I think UFC obviously wants to do the pay-per-view. So if it happens, expect to pay money for it. But it is a great card. So I just want to go through it because if this happens, it's going to be one of the best cards, I think, of all time. Like, absolutely has the potential to be. Like, when you look at the card, it's so stacked. So it, many ways, does look similar to UFC 249 and 250. I don't know what's going to be called right now. I'm calling it UFC 250 because in the past, when cards have canceled, like UFC 176, for instance, they have just skipped those cards. That was the Aldo Mendez card, the first one. They skipped it over and just went to UFC 177 or UFC 151, Dan Henderson and Jon Jones. That was canceled. They just skipped to 152. So I'll call it UFC 250, but I have no idea if that's actually the name for it. No, none of us do, quite frankly. But if this card happens, this is what the card looks like. In the main event, we'll have Tony Ferguson against Justin Gaethje for the interim lightweight belt. Same situation with Habib. He's practicing Ramadan for the next few months, so he's going to be out for a little while, probably till September, optimistically. And honestly, that could coincide with return of the UFC schedule, so that would work out really well if that happened. But yeah, I mean, no surprise here. This is the main event. There's 3 title fights scheduled for this card, but they're choosing to go with this as the main event. Even though it's an interim belt, it is the best fight of the 3, and an amazing fight. I hope it happens because I think it'd be a great fight. Co-main event, Dominic Cruz against Henry Cejudo. And another intriguing fight for sure, but I still don't think Dominic Cruz deserves a title shot whatsoever, to be honest. Like, if they have time too, if they have another 3 or 4 weeks, like, there's other fighters I'd rather see fight for the belt. I understand he's a legend and Cejudo's going on the Legends tour right now, so I get it, but I just feel like there's better guys out there right now. Like, I'd personally rather see Sterling fight Cejudo or even Sandhagen. Like, those guys are, to me, a little bit more intriguing matchups. Peter Yan's the guy I really want to see fight for the belt, but he is stuck in Russia, so that's not going to happen anytime soon. But they are getting it to Dominic Cruz. If this card happens, he'll be fighting for the belt. And the guy is like experienced as heck. Don't get me wrong. It's just he hasn't fought in so long that I'm very worried about the ring rust for him. And Cejudo's look so good lately, so I view that as kind of a mismatch, to be honest with you. Whereas I feel like Ferguson Gaethje is a closer fight. This one to me looks like a mismatch, as does the other title fight, although this one was another fight scheduled for the original UFC 250 card. Amanda Nunes against Felicia Spencer, and I think most of us like Nunes a lot in that fight. She's looked amazing lately, of course. Spencer's pretty good for sure, and it is a featherweight, so that makes it a little bit more interesting, I guess. But yeah, Nunes right now is one of the bigger favorites on the card. You can go to Best Fight Odds and look at all the odds for this card. They have dropped odds for all 12 fights scheduled. That's pretty sweet. you guys can get a head start on your homework if you are planning on betting this card. Although again, that homework might go to waste because there's no certainty this card's going to happen at all. Anyways, going through the card, Nagano versus Rosenstruck, they've rebooked it again. It's supposed to happen at UFC Columbus, then at UFC 249, then here at this card. It's just a great fight. Two of the best heavyweights in the world. I'm glad the UFC would keep this fight together. Nagano's still a big favorite there. Next up, Calvin Kattar, Jeremy Stephens, same situation. It was scheduled for the 249, and then the rescheduled card, and then this card. So I like Kattar there as well. I think most of us would. Stephens definitely durable, but Kattar has looked really good in the UFC. And here's the card, the one fight they added to the card that wasn't on the card originally. Anthony Pettis versus Donald Cerrone 2. They have fought before. It's been a long time, 8 years. Pettis knocked out Cerrone with a body kick, but this rematch would be interesting for sure. I think it's a good fight. Makes sense. Both guys kind of, in the later days of their career now, like Pettis is not super old by any means, but he's taking a lot of damage and he gets injured a lot now. So this is actually a pretty interesting fight. Cerrone's looked really good outside the last few fights, but again, he's been fighting elite competition. Like he's fought Conor, he fought Gaethje, he fought Ferguson, like three of the best guys in the world, three of the top 5 guys. They got knocked out, but still, before that, he'd beaten Hernandez and Iaquinta. So he's looked pretty good aside from those losses. You got to keep an asterisk next to him because look at who he lost to. That's an interesting fight. Right now, Pettis is a small favorite, but I think Cerrone has a chance to win that. Another fight, another heavyweight fight, Greg Hardy against Jorgen Castro. Another really good fight. They want to keep this together. And same with the Leonic Verdum fight. This was supposed to take place at UFC 250. This is a great fight. Verdum's a big favorite right now, but another heavyweight fight that someone can get finished in. So they have 3 heavyweight fights scheduled for this card, which is kind of interesting. Clearly, Dana White wants to get some knockouts, and the fans want to see some knockouts. So they figure, you know what, let's just put some heavyweights on this card. Going down the card, Carla Esparza versus Michelle Waterston. They definitely needed some women on this card besides that title fight. So it's good that there's another women's fight on the prelims here. I mean, it definitely is a fight can go either way. Both women kind of up and down in their careers, especially lately. Next up, Souza versus Hall. Once again, it's rebooked. Great fight. I do like Souza in that fight, though. Luque Price 2. That's another fight that's been rebooked. And then finally, Bryce Mitchell and Charles Rosa. That was supposed to happen in Oklahoma City, and they moved it to this card. So that's a really good fight, by the way. So there are a few fights that were scheduled for UFC 249, the rescheduled card, that are not on this card, which kind of sucks for those fighters. They started training or they were training for that camp, and then the fight card got canceled last week by Dana, and ESPN and Disney pulled the plug on it. And now they're not going to find this card either. So that kind of sucks for those fighters. Dana White has promised that he's going to take care of the fighters. I really hope he does because a lot of these guys – it's not really Dana's fault, guys, but they've been getting jerked around a lot. Like, they've been cutting weight numerous times. They've been, thinking in their heads, we're going to fly to this city, and then we're going to fly to this city, and then we're going to fly to this city. Like, they've had to put their lives and their families kind of at risk by training for a card that really is not going to happen, possibly. So that does suck for the fighters. I just hope that the UFC steps up and takes care of them. Dana says he will, so we'll see. Again, the full odds are up at Best Fight Odds, so if you want to place a bet, definitely go and take a look. There's still odds up for the Smith Teixeira and Herbertson Wyman card, but those cards are not happening, guys. This is going to be the next card if it happens. But again, May 9th is optimistic. I mean, Dana White's been optimistic this whole time. I can't believe he thought he was going to do the April 18th card. I mean, that's crazy. He thought so. But this card, there's a small chance. Like, there are other sports kind of like starting to announce they're coming back. I saw the PGA, I believe, is coming back in June, if I'm not mistaken. Again, with no fans, and this card won't have fans either, but that's interesting. And of course, WWE is still operating, which is another point I want to talk about here. So WWE has been deemed an essential business in Florida, and it's a very political situation. It's a financial kind of situation as well. There's been some money exchanged in order kind of for them to do their shows. My argument, and I'm sure Dana White's thinking the same thing, like, is it that much different than UFC? And I feel like he's going to make this argument to the Florida Athletic Commission and try to get some fights going there. I think Florida is a possibility for sure for this card. I saw some potential locations. I saw California, Texas, and Florida. So Texas especially has like a very kind of sketchy athletic commission. I think there's definitely a chance it could happen there. Florida as well. The California one, I mean, that's pretty optimistic. Again, I think it'd be on tribal land if it happened because I don't see the actual commission passing that fight. But those are some potential places. Maybe if Las Vegas opens, they can do it at the Apex. I think that would be ideal, obviously, for the UFC, but that's very optimistic as well. It's one of these things, guys, where, like, I actually want to see this card really bad. I feel like things are kind of tapering off. I mean, you don't really know for sure. Like things could get worse in a couple weeks as far as the coronavirus goes, but I feel like things are getting somewhat better. But again, the doctors are going to make the call for the country and for the world. So we'll see what happens. I hope this card happens though, because I think all of us really need something to happen as far as UFC goes. We're all missing that from our lives right now, and it's been a month, and 2 months will suck. But if it doesn't happen, I'm not going to be surprised either. Also, I should mention Kamaru Usman. He's another guy that he's not on the card right now, but he actually does say he's open to being on the card to fight Masvidal. Obviously, just depends on how much money he's getting paid. So he's supposed to fight Masvidal in the summer in July, International Fight Week. That was ideal for sure the whole time, but I don't know if that's going to happen now because there's a lot of fights that have been pushed back. So the whole schedule's been pushed back a month, which sucks. But yeah, I think it's a situation where, and Ariel Helwani's talked about this. I think Dana White is probably going to have to do a couple cards a week. And I saw Ariel saying that it could be like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday situation. Like they might have to do actually 3 cards a week just to catch up and get these guys fights. So we'll see what happens. But for sure, the UFC, they're waiting for the schedule to resume as soon as possible because they need to give their fighters fights under their contracts. And if they can't do that, that's not good for the fighters. Fighters have to fight. All right. Fight Island, that's still being considered for sure. Dana White says that the renovations will be done in a month. Some people are thinking now maybe he's pulling our leg and this thing's not real. I think it is real, but who knows where it is, right? Like it just says an international location. We don't know where it is. If it happens, it's going to be a situation, guys, where for the most part, you'll have international fighters fighting on this fight island, and you'll have the American fighters fighting in the States. I think that's what's going to happen for at least the next couple of months, if it happens. But if it does happen, I think, there's some sweet fights you can put on Fight Island for sure. So, again, we have no idea where this Fight Island is, and we have no idea how close it is to being ready. But Dana says a month, and who are we to not believe him? All right, a couple other things here. Anthony Smith, he returned fire against Jon Jones. Jon Jones has obviously been in the news a lot lately for his DUI and his gun arrest. He basically said when Smith had the whole home intruder invasion incident, Jon Jones said, I'm glad you're okay, but I would have, that guy would have made on my house, basically. So basically he was saying that he would have beat up the guy better than Smith did. And Smith thought he was taking a shot at him and called him a douchebag and all this stuff. So, these guys are definitely feuding a bit. It's potentially a fight we could see a second time one day, but first fight was not very close. I like Smith a lot. He's a good fighter, but I just don't see the rematch going well for him if it ever happens personally, but maybe it does. Ronda Rousey's also been in the news a lot lately. She's been talking quite a bit about just different things, asked her questions on WWE especially, but she was asked by Steve-O, yes, the guy from Jackass, Steve-O's podcast, and he was talking about money issues, financial issues. She was pressed on a few subjects, so I actually listened to an interview a few days ago, and she's just in a different situation than most fighters because she made so much money, and she was always at the top of the game. She was never at the bottom. She doesn't know how it feels. So anyway, she was talking about the sponsorship thing, and basically was saying, like, this is the Reebok thing is a good thing for the fighters because it makes the sport more like professional, I guess. And that's basically her argument. She was saying she hopes that maybe that they sign a better deal in the future. But her argument is like, well, in the NFL and NBA, they don't have individual sponsorships. They have like team sponsorships and league sponsorships. Why should MMA be different? I know what she's saying, but it's an individual sport. I don't even think you can compare the two. Like, I feel like comparing team sports to individual sports there's no point in doing that. Like, they're better off comparing it to boxing, which I believe like any sponsor works, or even Bellator within MMA. They're better off comparing it to MMA in general. So I didn't really agree with her comparison. I understand why she said it, but I don't really agree with it. But again, the UFC and Dana White are pretty good to her in her career, so I'm not surprised she didn't like really criticize them. And also she talked about kind of like the comparison between boxing and the UFC, and also fighter unions. She just doesn't see it happening anytime soon, but I do agree with her on that. I don't see a fighter union happening, but these guys really need to band together. And I think a time like this is the perfect time to do so. Like, these guys and girls in MMA, like, they need to realize that the UFC has not been taking care of them as much as they probably should be taken care of right now. And I think that this could be a watershed moment where they do realize they need to band together. But again, it's going to take like a big star like McGregor or something to go out there and say, hey, I'm going to start the union or whatever. So again, that's something probably won't happen anytime soon, but this would be the type of situation where the fighters should be looking at it and saying, okay, you know what, maybe we should consider starting a union. Anyways, if anyone wants to throw any questions in, go ahead. It's going to take a look and see if there's any other news here. So, whatever. Let's see here. What do we see here? Well, Dominic Reyes, once again, he's saying the UFC wants the rematch. I'd like to see it personally. But, Jan definitely has a chance there. But again, it's so hard to talk about future fights right now because the schedule is so up in the air. Joanna Jacek and Willie Jang, they've been talking about a rematch. Joanna says, I don't need to make more money, but it's a money fight. I mean, she's made some good money in the UFC for sure. She's had a lot of title fights, but that would be a fun fight. That would be probably a money fight because I think a lot of people want to see that again. The first fight was amazing. For second fight could be good. And honestly, that's about it. I saw Carlos Condit and actually Cole broke this news. Carlos Condit wants to fight again this year. He's on a 5-fight losing skid. I mean, he is a legend, but he's got to win a fight. All right, I think that's going to be it for today's podcast, guys. Appreciate you tuning in. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. In the meantime, follow me on Twitter at MMAdammartin and follow me at MMAoddsbreaker.com, BJPen.com, MMAratings.net. Guys, stay safe this weekend. I'll see you Monday. Bye.